Welcome to Ground Control. In this tutorial we're going to be using an easier method for creating your templates for your motor mounts. Okay, so I used to create these on my computer, and I would get the dimensions, of the mount points on the motor from whatever vendor I bought the motor from. Created a diagram of that on my computer, print it out, and use that as my template for my motor mount. Sometimes those numbers are accurate, sometimes they're not so accurate. Then I would have to, of course, if they weren't accurate, I would have to take the motor, I would have to manually measure the centers of all the screws, measure the diameter of the race for the bearing and the C-clamp and the shaft, go back in, edit my template, print it out again, test it, make sure it would fit okay. Sometimes that's a consuming process. Time-consuming process, so I found an easier way of doing this. So what you're going to need is you're going to need an ink pad, a pencil, a compass, and it would probably help if you also had a ruler, a stiff piece of paper, or I'm using a scrap piece of poster board in this case. You need your motor. This one is a Racer Star BR2208 1400 kV, and you'll need the mount screws for your motor. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to run your screws in just enough to where they're secure. You want to make sure that all of them are the same height. Back this one up a little bit. Make sure that all the screws are the same height because we want to get a good impression. You can test that by putting the motor down on a flat surface and making sure that you're not getting any wobble from it. Excuse me. And as you can see on this motor, at least hopefully I hope you can see it in the video, but this screw and this screw are they are set in further than these two screws. These two screws are closer to the outside of the race than the other two. So this hole pattern is not square, which makes it more difficult creating your computer diagram for that. So at this point we're ready to go ahead and make our impressions on our scrap piece of paper. Let me go ahead and this is the impression on this is not going to be perfect because this is an old ink pad. I need to get a new one. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to take those screws and we're going to put those into our ink pad. We're going to get some ink on them. Depending on the age of your ink pad, if you've got an old one like mine, you're going to have to roll this around a little bit. Okay, so now we want to take it over to our scrap piece of paper, and we want to firmly place it without moving it, put a little pressure to get a good imprint of all four of those screws. Okay, and so there we have, let me cover this back up so it doesn't get any more dried out. Now we have an imprint of all four of our screws. Two of them are really good, the other two not so great, but they're good enough that you can see exactly where the centers of the holes are. So when you drill your pilot holes in whatever material you're going to be using for your motor mount, you'll be able to go direct center of these imprints, which is just, it's going to be right the first time. So there's no trial and error here. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to take our ruler and we want to line up the centers of these holes diagonally. And the reason that we're doing this is because I want to find the center of this hole pattern so that we can draw the cutout of where our bearing race is, our C-clip that holds our shaft in. And if you can see this, I don't know if you can, but if you can see this, you'll see that the C-clip and the shaft stick out further down than the bottom of the motor. So we need to accommodate that. So take your compass, or you can take your ruler and measure it, but you want to take your compass and you want to get the radius from the center of that shaft to where that race is, where the bearing fits in, and that's the diameter or the radius that I want the circle that I'm going to draw. So let's go ahead and draw our other line. We've got the center to center line on one side. Now let's get the center to center line on the other side of the centers of these mount holes. Okay, and then where those two lines intersect is going to be the center of that hole pattern. So now we want to take our compass and set our pin right in the intersection of those two lines, and then we want to draw our circle. There we go. So now we have a perfect template for our motor mount. We can get the exact centers of our screw mounts from our imprints from the ink pad, and we've got a circle drawn that will accommodate the bearing race, the C-clip, and the shaft. So now we've got all 5 of the holes that we need to drill out. So I would just take this template. You can trim it down as much as you need to, and just tape this template to whatever material you're going to be using for your motor mount, and then you can drill out all these holes the diameter that you need. Of course, you don't want to drill out the motor mount holes any larger diameter than what your screws are, so be sure and measure those as well. But we also have the diameter of the center race where the bearing, the C-clip, and the shaft are. So all you have to do now is tape this to whatever material you're going to use for your motor mount, drill it out, and it's going to be exact and it's going to fit perfectly. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope this makes it easier for you to create templates for your different motors. And please subscribe, give a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.